House Republicans are pushing U.S. President Donald Trump to back a bill to stop family separations at the border, with now nearly 2,000 children detained and separated from their parents so far. President Trump continues to place the blame on the Democrats. In a recent tweet, he had this to say: Democrats are the problem. They don't care about crime. They want illegal immigrants, no matter how bad they may be, to pour into and infest our country like MS-13. They can't win on their terrible policies, so they view them as potential voters. This mounting controversy over this zero-tolerance approach in the U.S. is now shifting attention to Canada's own policies around the issue of detention and separation of minors. Joining us with more is the founder of Bellissimo Law Group. That is Mario Bellissimo. Good to have you back with us.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. U.S. is not the only country, as we know, that detains children at the border or separate them from their parents. Are they breaking any laws in the U.S.?
Well, that's a great question. In terms of what the law is in the United States, it would seem that this is more policy-driven at this point. And because of that, my understanding is it could be stopped at any time.
It is heart-wrenching to see these pictures, to hear the cries of children being separated and confusion from parents not knowing where their kids are. There have been several calls for our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, to act. So far, he has remained silent, has not spoken out. But last year, Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale did issue a directive to avoid separating families and to keep kids out of detention when we talk about immigration. We also reached out to the Canadian Border Services Agency for a statement. And, Mario, we wanted to know what might be the issues around detention of children at the Canadian border. Their response was CBSA detention decisions when minors are involved are guided by the best interests of the child. But what does that mean for kids whose families have crossed illegally into this country?
Well, what it means is in Canadian law, there is a primary consideration. It's enshrined in the Immigration Act. We've adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which the United States and Somalia are two countries that have not. And so there's a primary consideration that the best interests of the children should guide any sort of detention. And the Act also codifies that detention of minors should be of last resort.
We have had at least 5 cases in between 2017 and 2018 where kids have been separated from their parents. What are some of the factors that go into that decision by CBSA?
Well, there can be identity issues, there can be safety issues, there may be a need to separate, but it's very extreme. It is, and if it does occur, it should only occur for a very short period. Sometimes children have to be brought in for protection from their own parents.
Yesterday, we heard in the House of Commons the immigration minister speaking, and he said, look, this is an issue, at least here in Canada, that is not about deterring, because we've heard this being used as a deterrent in the U.S. for migrants coming across illegally. He said this is not about deterrence, this is about managing the system. But we've heard from various provinces in this country that the system is broken, and with this influx, it is difficult to manage. So could we potentially see more of this in Canada?
Well, the hope is not. I don't think it's a fair comment to suggest that the system is broken. It is taxed. We are dealing with potentially unprecedented numbers. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, in any immigration or refugee determination system, when you move away from individualization, when you move to a zero-tolerance policy, is usually when you're making serious errors that have lasting psychological consequences, especially as it involves children.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, lastly, the idea of a safe country. And critics have said, look, we want the U.S. removed as a safe country, making, therefore, Canada not a third party, because they've also said yesterday that they want to pull out of the UN Human Rights Council. So the concern here is, with the accountability of the Human Rights Council removed, could the U.S. be removed as a safe country option for immigrants?
I think it's definitely something that has to be seriously considered by the Canadian government. Obviously, it's a safe third country agreement. The whole point is, are our asylum or here refugee systems compatible? Mm-hmm. In the sense that the United States is now moving away from domestic violence as being a ground for acceptable risk or gang violence. So when you begin to move the goalposts, when you begin to change the individualization, as I mentioned before, of what a risk is, and you start to engage in policies that are so separate from what we do here in Canada, we have to really consider, is that country still a safe ground? Now, there are enormous implications to doing that. It will not be an easy decision, but definitely should be looked at present.
All right, lots of realignment happening. Thanks so much, Mario, for coming in and
My
talking
pleasure.
more about this with us.
Thank you.